In this video, we're going to be looking at the loanable funds market. Assume that the nominal interest rate is 5% and inflation is 2%. We know that the real interest rate would be 3%. And we also know that if inflation increases to 4%, then the nominal interest rate is going to have to change. Borrowers and lenders focus on real interest rates since that represents their real rate of return. Is a real interest rate of 50% good or bad? Well, it would be bad for borrowers, but it would be good for lenders. In the loanable funds market, this market shows the supply and demand of loans and shows the equilibrium real interest rate. For demand, there's an inverse relationship between the real interest rate and the quantity of loans that are demanded. For supply, there's a direct relationship between the real interest rate and the quantity of loans that banks are going to want to supply. This is not the same loan market as the money market, so it's very important to make that distinction. The supply of loans is not vertical like we saw in the money market graphs. At the equilibrium real interest rate, the amount borrowers want to borrow equals the amount lenders want to lend. And notice, in contrast to the money market graph, again, supply is upward sloping instead of being vertical. Savings is what makes lending possible. So private savings refers to the amount of money that households save instead of consume, and public saving refers to the amount that the government saves. National savings would be the sum of both public and private saving. A change in either public or private saving will shift the supply of loanable funds. So let's suppose that the government increases deficit spending. If that happens, public savings and the supply of loanable funds would fall. So on the loanable funds graph, this means that supply shifts to the left and the real interest rate would increase from here to here. Borrowing is the demand of loanable funds. So you have private investment, so businesses that borrow money, also consumers, and we also have government borrowing through deficit spending. A change that affects borrowing will shift the demand of loanable funds. So the things that shift demand are changes in borrowing by consumers or changes in borrowing by businesses, which we refer to as the I or investment spending, or changes in deficit spending by the government. Supply shifters are changes in private savings, changes in public savings, or changes in foreign investment, money that's coming into or flowing out of our country. And the demand for loans comes from borrowers or investors. The supply for loans comes from lenders or savers. So what will happen to the demand and supply for loanable funds if there's political instability? Demand and supply would both shift. The demand would decrease as worried consumers and businesses would borrow less. The supply would also decrease as worried foreigners could take their money out of the U.S., and this is known as capital flight. So both things are shown on this graph, demand shifting to the left and supply shifting to the left as well. And the answer, practice FRQ, and the answers.